Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going somewhere special, and frankly a place I've been wanting to go for years. You see, about a year ago I heard this story, a true story, that when Bill and Melinda Gates became married, they visited China for part of their honeymoon. Okay, that's normal, great food, amazing culture and history, and beautiful scenery. Here's where the story gets interesting. Now, this was many years ago, and during that honeymoon, they rented an entire train that was once the special train carriage for a national leader and traveled by rail, not private jet, but by train, and ended up in Xinjiang, where the two of them toured and learned about the famous dry mummies of the Tarim Basin. Now, when I heard this story, I of course went on the computer and found out what I could about what would compel who was then the wealthiest man in the world to take a 30-hour train ride on his honeymoon. What exactly was there to see? Well, today I'm going to answer that question and show you some fascinating pieces of human heritage. And as always, every piece of supporting footage you'll see is filmed by myself on location. I can't wait. Let's get started. Our story today takes place in the ancient Silk Road. You see, entire towns sprang up here throughout the last millennium. Even small kingdoms appeared in the middle of the desert. Now, most of these towns have disappeared, reclaimed by the sands, but that doesn't stop our curiosity about what happened here thousands of years ago. And it was this curiosity in 1980 on April Fool's Day, actually, when archaeologists working in the Tarim Basin made a groundbreaking discovery, a 3,800-year-old mummy that we today call the Beauty of Loulan. What these archaeologists found that day would be the first of dozens of naturally preserved bodies buried along what later became the Silk Road. This was not an April Fool's joke. You see, throughout our history, there are so many examples that prove humans have been obsessed with preserving the dead and ascending into the afterlife. How many of us have seen the 1999 movie The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser? I was a young boy seeing Egyptian mummies dramatized by Hollywood for the first time, and it totally got me hooked on Egyptology. What the Egyptians created 4,000 to 5,000 years ago is what we today call man-made mummies. You have to take out the brain, then the organs, drench the body in chemicals, and wrap it with cloth. That's a man-made mummy. But in various parts of the world, we've discovered natural bodies totally preserved by nature. There's the Iceman, who lived more than 5,000 years ago and perished in the snowy Alps. His body was essentially frozen for 5 millennium before it was discovered in 1991. Then you have what are called bog bodies, and they're not rare. Thousands of them have been found. What you have is someone died, fell into a wetland that we call a bog, B-O-G, and the chemical makeup of this wetland just so happened to be perfect for preserving human tissue. Then you have the miracles. Remember in my last couple of episodes, I showed you the miracle that is the Han Dynasty tomb called Ma Wang Dui, one of the greatest discoveries in the last century. That's the definition of a miracle. Multiple tomb raiders dug all around Lady Dai's tomb. They even robbed her husband and her son's tomb, came within centimeters of reaching hers, but ultimately left empty-handed. Thankfully, their failure resulted in the discovery of the century, a natural mummy so well preserved that archaeologists even found her last meal still intact in her stomach. That miracle is on display today in the Hunan Museum in a special display case that contains no oxygen. But you know what makes the Beauty of Loulan and another famous dry mummy, discovered later called the Cherchen man, so special? They were ordinary people, just like so many of us today. You see, Lady Dai in the famous Ma Wang Dui, she was the wife of the Grand Chancellor of the Changsha Kingdom. Her husband was the equivalent of a prime minister today, so her burial was extravagant, stuffed with merchandise and luxury goods. The beauty of Loulan was just an ordinary woman living in the harsh environment of the desert, and she was buried with what was probably her only possessions in the world, what she was wearing, what she had on her at the time. And for almost 4,000 years, she was resting before being placed in front of us today. She lived a very humble life. The clothes she was wearing wasn't even long enough to cover her ankles in a place that gets to well below zero at night. To me, there's just something romantic and serene about seeing her at rest, finally at peace. To understand how the beauty of Loulan and the Cherchen man were so well preserved after thousands of years, just look at the environment. Every night in Urumqi, I had to apply lotion, and that's coming from Guangdong province that's so humid I never need to use moisturizers. It's the same as if you flew from Miami to Las Vegas. You're now in a city built in the middle of a desert. The climate is extremely dry. And that's the perfect recipe for preservation. You see, when the grave robbers opened the tombs of Lady Dai's husband and son, yeah, they stole a lot of valuable things. But the biggest sin they committed is they broke the tomb's seal. Then over time, moisture creeps in, and corrosion eventually destroys much of what the tomb raiders left behind. Our greatest obstacle in studying our ancestors is moisture. It causes so much damage. So the biggest destruction tomb raiders cause is not only the theft. Yeah, they're thieves. We all know that. But it's the mess that they make that corrodes what's left behind. You don't have this problem in the Tarim Basin, in the desert. This is a naturally dry environment that's brutally cold at night with long winters, and the daytime is filled with punishing sunlight. There's very little moisture here and even less rainfall. It's the perfect environment that allowed them to teleport through time. We will never know what this woman's name is. She was buried in an unmarked grave. We call her the beauty of Loulan because of her distinct facial features and because she was found near the ruins of the Loulan kingdom. Nowadays, we even have the technology to reconstruct what she looked like in real life. If you look at this portrait, I now understand why they call her the beauty of Loulan. Today, she rests in Urumqi in this gorgeous modern museum that houses some of the finest examples of dry mummies in the world. There's technology working 24/7 to protect her. But also displayed in that same room is the Cherchen man and his wife. Very few people know that he was actually buried with his wife and child in the same shallow grave about 3,000 years ago. He was a decently tall man, standing at nearly 178 centimeters, or about 5 foot 10 inches. Around that very same time, there is a great civilization arising around the banks of the Yellow River in what is Henan province today. You see, in that civilization, in what would have been the late Shang dynasty and early Zhou dynasty, society already had a clear hierarchy with the king at the very top. But here, in the harsh environment of the Taklamakan desert, where the Cherchen man was buried, life was different. There were far fewer people in this vast land, a less developed social hierarchy, and the people had to move around in order to survive. I have to impress this on you. For something that's this old, 3,000 years, it's almost unheard of to find a completely preserved tomb containing common people. You see, the graves that were discovered of that era in Henan belonged to the Shang dynasty kings and queens, noblemen, rich folks. And those tombs were all robbed and looted long ago in antiquity. Here, thanks to the dry climate and the fact that there's nothing valuable to steal, the Cherchen man lived off the land, and he was buried wearing a simple red tunic, a couple leggings, and some bracelets. There's nothing to tempt tomb raiders. I suppose there's something deeply ironic about all this, that the people who had it all 3,000 years ago, the kings and queens who built these lavish and tremendous tombs, sacrificed a bunch of animals and even people to go with them into the afterlife. Well, they're nowhere to be found today. Their tombs were looted and their bodies are long gone. Yet the Cherchen man, who had nothing to his name except the clothes he was wearing, is now resting peacefully today with his wife and child. Now that's something worth thinking about. That brings us to the end of today's episode. The Xinjiang Museum in Urumqi is an incredible place to visit. I saw some of the most incredible markers of human ingenuity from our ancestors. I know I keep using the word incredible, but that's a really fitting description. What you saw today is just scratching the surface of its vast collection, and I encourage all of you to visit this amazing place. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for many more shows to come. I'll see you on the next one.